well, this is California, and this is just another fabulous place in one of the best spots in the world. I think most people would tell you that California can give you any number of reasons to smile and to feel like we're blessed. This is one of them. And I want to take a moment to thank the assembly member who represents this area. Wow, is she lucky? Assemblywoman Monique Limon, who has been a champion on issues on behalf of families, on behalf of the environment, is here with us. And I will turn this microphone over to her to say some words after I finish. Also with me is Julia Forgey, who is one of our attorneys who's been a champion in this fight and who is leading part of this effort to defend California's right to protect our people, our health, and our environment. And I'm pleased that Julia's here. And if there's some questions that are very detailed or technical with regard to the action we're announcing today, I can always turn the microphone over to her as well to respond to any of those questions that you might have. But as blessed as we are in California, I think some people will remember that 50 years ago, this didn't look like a blessed place, because back in 1969, January 1969, an oil spill occurred here. An oil spill that would have left these shores looking very, very different. You had dying, oil-drenched sea mammals, otters. You had birds. You had aquatic life that was coming to the shore, drenched in oil. You had waves today crashing against the beaches that were silenced by the thickness of the oil, the sludge that covered some 50 square miles of this beautiful ocean. 30 square miles of what you see today as type of water we would like to have our children be able to dip their feet into. Though Union Oil's ruptured well was capped after about 11 days, a series of undersea faults cratered open. And the result was the continued release of oil and gas for another 11 months until December 1969. When then President Richard Nixon saw what had happened to this coastline, he said about this disaster, quote, "It had touched the conscience of the American people." He pledged that when it came to the environment, the federal government was, quote, "going to do a better job than we have done in the past." And he took action. The Santa Barbara oil spill was one of the several dramatic environmental crises that led to the creation of a National Environmental Protection Agency back in 1970. That's about the time that we created the Clean Air Act, which helped us have the Environmental Protection Agency. But now, decades later, the conscience of today's leaders in Washington, D.C. appears to be AWOL. And it seems that the EPA has forgotten what its mission is. 50 years after President Nixon's words, the Trump administration is attempting to rob California of its authority to set vehicle emission standards for greenhouse gas emissions and to require manufacturers to sell zero-emission vehicles in our state. Those standards and requirements are essential to air quality improvements in some of our most heavily impacted areas. California standards not only improve air quality and curb greenhouse gas emissions, they save our California population money. Those who drive, they save money. California's leadership and its expertise and the presence of serious air pollution concerns in our state led the Congress to recognize California's authority when it came to cleaning up the air, to combat our air pollution by setting our own stringent vehicle emission standards. I want to be clear on something. Every time California sets a new air pollution rule for new motor vehicles, we have to get a waiver from the EPA every time. Since Governor Ronald Reagan approved the creation of California's Air Resources Board, We have been granted more than 100 waivers by the federal government to set those standards over the past 50 years. Thanks to the state regulations written under federal waivers, California saw a reduction of hundreds of thousands of tons of emissions per year between 1970 and 2010. California standards have encouraged the development of critical emissions control technologies, many of which have been deployed nationally now. Some of California's standards have also led to stronger standards from the EPA itself. All of this ultimately leading to cleaner cars, cleaner air, and a better America. The Trump administration is trying to undo the progress we've made as a state and as a nation over the past decades. We can't afford to do that. We cannot afford to backslide in our battle against climate change, not in California. That's why today, along with Governor Gavin Newsom, the chairwoman of the California Air Resources Board, Mary Nichols, and a multi-state and city coalition, we are filing a lawsuit opposing the EPA's attempt to revoke the portions of a waiver it granted to the state of California in 2013 to set our own greenhouse gas and zero-emission vehicle standards. This lawsuit is one part of a multi-part effort to push back on these Trump administration attacks on our clean car standards, on our environment, and our state's public health. Those efforts include an ongoing lawsuit against the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration for its unlawful preemption of preemption of our work through its regulations. The Trump administration continues to side with polluters instead of protecting our families, our health, and in tackling air pollution. But no matter how many times the Trump administration attempts to sabotage our efforts, we will be there to fight for clean air and for our families and for our health and for our environment. This speech serves as a stark reminder of our obligation to protect our planet and to decrease the impact gasoline and gas-powered cars have on our environment. That's what our clean car standards do. They not only work, they've been adopted by many other states around the country. The Trump administration and the EPA may have lost their conscience, but here in California, we'll continue to use the full force of the law to protect our people and our environment, and we will remind the federal government through our lawsuit of its responsibilities to do its job. With that, let me now turn the microphone over to Assemblymember Monique Limon.
Thank you, Attorney General Javier Becerra. Here in Santa Barbara, we have seen firsthand what happens when we don't attempt every effort to protect our environment. Our community has lived this through the last decades. And what we know is that in this community and in every other community in our state, we are not interested in going back to the old way of protecting our environment or the old way of doing things. Today, our Attorney General in California is not only standing up for cleaner car standards, he's standing up for our ability to breathe cleaner air. I want to make that clear. This is about Californians' ability to breathe cleaner air. We must protect our environment. The environmental laws of California are working, and they are working in other states as well, reducing preventable pollution by hundreds of thousands of tons every year. In both Ventura and Santa Barbara County, we know the importance of this as we have a high commuter area. We know that it is important to reduce the pollutants in the air. We all want to preserve our Central Coast and its beauty for generations to come. And the only way that we can do that is by fighting for what is right and protecting our environment, providing clean air, clean water, and a clean community for our constituents. Thank you very much to Attorney General Javier Becerra for being here and for protecting Californians' right to breathe clean air.
We'll take any questions if there happen to be any. Yes.
What prompted the decision to do this now?
The lawsuit, we were prompted by the actions of the federal government, the Trump administration, and the Environmental Protection Agency trying to revoke our authority to have these waivers that allow us to set these higher standards. And we have no choice but to act because the administration is not willing to back down. Yeah. Any other question? If not, we want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank Assemblymember Limon for joining us today. And I want to thank Julia and all the team that's doing the work to make sure we defend California and its right to have clean air. Thank you.